Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast, episode 101. The title of this podcast is The Purpose of Adversity and Why It is Crucial to Keep on Growing. Since birth, we have been sheltered and protected by our parents. When we come from a loving home, we were fed, clothed, and provided with our daily necessities. We attended school, were guided by teachers, and learned from other students and learn to differentiate between those to be friends with and those to stay away from. The world consists of friendly faces and not so friendly people. This is just how the world was designed. We spent our years learning about the basic academic subjects such as math, English, science, and history. We spent days and hours learning by repetition and memorizing the key factors so that we could be prepared in the future. But the sad truth is that no one could prepare you for the struggles and trials you will eventually face in life. No one could predict and say what the future holds, and you will endure trauma and that you will be involved in an abusive relationship. No one will prepare you to manage emotions or face a crisis when it arrives. Therefore, the lack of understanding of our own emotions and how to process them was surely not part of the academic lessons, let alone sharing them with someone else. So we kept inside in our hearts and suppressed our emotional turmoil, expressing how we truly feel, and sharing it with others might be perceived as weakness. However, suppression and the ability to be vulnerable and a lack of openness to share how you feel will eventually cost you in the future. The sad part about not being able to share how you feel is that no matter how much you hide and pretend that you are not unbreakable, it will eventually give away, and it takes its form like an outburst of anger, and you will get easily triggered and irritated with the small nuances or annoyances in life. We spent years in school memorizing facts. However, we were never bothered by discussing the importance of communication skills and how to effectively communicate openly and articulate what you have been keeping inside your heart. Thus, as you grow up as an adult, we end up arguing over the little things, and we somehow become our enemies because we cannot agree to disagree. We can always think that the other's opinion is actually contrary to mine, so we're just going to be on each other's throat. We always think that communicating, even with our differences, is an attack, even though it is a form of debate. But because we were not used to having an adult discussion and having real conversations since we were children, and now that we're an adult, many of us struggled with the ability to communicate openly without shutting down or avoiding a hard conversation. And then, however, you will never grow unless you're courageous enough to speak up and address the things that you have buried several years ago. Letting go and breaking free requires us to say things even when it is deemed uncomfortable and even when it might offend someone else. But at least we use our voice to share our problems and to ask questions. However, it also has a downside of sharing too much of your information when you encounter narcissistic people in your life because you thought that people will keep your secret and will never use it against you. That was a wishful thinking on my side, because when I shared my secret to the people that I thought was supposed to be trusted, they will gaslight you and shame you in return. However, this talk is not just about expressing how you feel, but this is the benefits of facing adversity. When I thought about my own life, looking back, the divorce of my parents, the separation of my mom and dad when it became finalized when I was in my 12 years old, it also had a silver lining. If my dad was not able to remarry another woman, I wouldn't be here in this country, the land of opportunity, the United States of America. If somehow my uncle didn't have an affair with the other woman that is related to my husband, I wouldn't have my husband today. Sometimes we think that God has a sense of humor, doesn't it? As if your life could be in a movie. It has ups and downs, ebbs and flows, different turns, and that's just life. It depends on the perspective that you have. Sometimes in the moment, we may not understand why God would allow such pain to happen. Same thing with my abuse. No one would ever wish that you would encounter sexual abuse. and verbal and physical and emotional abuse when you're in your teenage years. Teenager is already hard enough, let alone being in an abusive home, and enduring that is even a double kind of sword, a two-edged sword per se. But in the long run, when you become my age and you look back and you reflect that not because adversity is unnecessary, but it actually serves a purpose. Of course, at that moment, I never really thought that then, because who would want to be in that kind of situation, as I said. However, it teaches you about your boundary. As I always like to talk on my channel, it's about healthy boundaries. What are the things that you should not tolerate? And your standard in life will completely change your point of view about people. Pain is going to teach you that. Adversity will teach you who to trust, and that the next time that you're going to open your heart to people, you will have discernment and the wisdom to really listen carefully, not just because they said something that is pleasantly nice in your face, but because you will detect from now on that some people are not to be trusted, even though they may flatter you in your face. But if you keep on seeing the same pattern, over time, you will pick up on the signs, and that your body is going to protect you and your brain is going to warn you, saying this has to be flagged and you have to really watch out for this kind of individual. So yes, adversity is actually painful. However, it can also make you resilient and becomes wiser than ever before. Because when you are facing adversity, God is not only after your own happiness. He wants you to be strong, wiser, courageous. When I did not endure the pain that I have endured, I probably would still be lack of confidence. I would still shrink and please people. But because of the pain that I have faced throughout my adulthood, I have realized that this pain was actually helping me to build my self-esteem. It helped me to grow thick skin and to really face my problems now head on instead of running away from them. It took me 10 years to admit and acknowledge that I was in an abusive relationship because I was afraid of the judgment. I was shameful of what people could perceive me as. And so I kept it inside me. I kept silent for many years, struggling to survive. I had a double life. However, when I faced my own trauma, and I was honest about it, and I openly discuss or share it, it was somehow the time for me to feel free. It was as if a weight of boulder that was on my shoulders that I've been carrying for many years, that somehow I could breathe finally. As Jesus poignantly said, the truth will set you free. And the moment you speak the truth, and the moment you share that truth to someone that was one of my closest friend in college, the first person that I have said it to, as if she heard what I said, and she lent me a helping hand, and I cried on her shoulders, and she offered up a prayer to release me out of that burden that I've been keeping. Because I think one of the tactic of the enemy is not to share it, to keep it to yourself, because the devil truly is the one who wants us to be imprisoned with the lies and to just keep it a secret, because for some reason it will, when the moment you break the silence, it no longer has the power on you. When you release that imprisonment and that struggle that you have been facing, or that kind of secret that you've been keeping because the devil told you not to share it to anyone, that is actually a form of imprisonment more than liberty. But the moment you share that to someone that you can trust with, it will free you from the shackles from hell. And that is why most of the predators, most of the people that will abuse you, their number one rule is never tell a soul. It's between you and I. Never share it to anyone. Nobody's going to listen to you. These are the kinds of narrative that I've been listening to people that have been manipulating me all my life. However, adversity is not only going to teach you about yourself and other people. Also, you will change about the way you see the world. As I said, the world's a beautiful thing. The world was created by God beautifully and in perfect condition. However, the people in it, the people is always the problem. We live in an imperfect world. People are fallen. It is always the question of the heart. Jeremiah accordingly said it that the heart is deceitful above all else. You could never cure the heart unless God's Spirit will dwell inside of you. That's why it says in the Bible to guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it comes the issues of life. The issue is the heart. People are wicked. If you don't have the Spirit of God in you, there's only another spirit that dwells inside of you, which is the darkness, which is the lie, which is the wickedness. There's only two camps in this world, whether we like it or not, either the righteousness or the wickedness, the light and the darkness. It's either the truth teller or the ones who constantly manipulate us or gaslight us to think that we're stupid enough not to see exactly what Paul wrote. We do not wrestle against blood and flesh. Our enemy is not really something that we see. The things that we don't understand why wicked things happen to good people or bad people can get away with things, it's because it has always been the same problem ever since the beginning of time. It's always been the darkness force between the light. It's always the truth against the lie. And so we cannot really say that we don't have any choice, for that matter. After the adversity that you have faced, you do have a choice to either use it to inspire other people and to help them understand that it is possible to get to the other side, that there is a God who can make things impossible into possibility. He can use your struggle into some kind of inspiration. We have overcome by the blood of the Lamb, by the power of our testimony. It is our testimony, it is our sharing our story to other people that we know that there is a God, not a God that is a pigment of your imagination, not a God that was just created by people in the movie, but it's a real God who created the universe many years ago. And he's still the same God yesterday, today, and forever. And this is the same God who have rescued me many years ago, and the same God who has still always available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Only if you're willing enough to humble yourself and call upon the name of the Lord, and he will rescue you. And that is why I have learned that adversity, even though at times it seems as it's very painful to endure those things, but when he said, do not let go, be strong and be courageous. Have I not commanded you to be strong and be courageous? It is not just a suggestion, it is a command to be strong and courageous. It is a command when he said, be steadfast, be immovable, do not quit, do not give up, for I, the Lord your God, will vindicate you. He meant what he said, because looking back now, I am now living the kind of life that God truly promised me yesterday when he said, the thoughts and the plans that I have for you is not to harm you, but to give you hope in the future. At that moment when he gave me that promise in Jeremiah 29:11, it seems as though he was lying, because at that moment when I was enduring my pain, it could not possibly be, as if I could not get out of myself in that kind of situation. It was impossible for me to somehow get out of that abusive relationship. But then looking back, God fulfilled his promise, because he is not a God that he should lie. He's not a God that his hands are too short to extend when you are asking for help. And so adversity is something that people might sometimes want to run away from or pretend like it's not happening. And I know that we have a lot of crutches that we use in this world to numb our pain, to escape from the pain of the reality that we have endured it. That's why we cannot do it alone. We cannot say that I got this, or I can deal with this, because when you read the Bible, it's always the hands of God that was able to make other people got through the pain. Jeremiah was used by God, and he also was helped to escape from the persecution of the leaders in those days. David was met by Goliath, and it wasn't because of David's hands that helped him took down the giant in his day, but it was the God's hands. Moses, and then Jesus, of course. Even Jesus said that, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, for I will give you rest, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We can learn from him because he's humble, and he is the one who is a good shepherd to everyone. So adversity in a moment, is that something that we can all never underestimate, why God allows you to feel this pain. And as I said, I was talking to one of my sisters yesterday about why is it that sometimes we don't see the things in the moment, because at that moment, God doesn't really give you a plan. He doesn't tell you in 5 years from now, you'll see what I'm going to do. He just tells you to have faith and to remain faithful and to trust him, that all things work together for good to those whom he has called for his purpose and for his glory. Whatever the devil meant to harm you, God will turn it around for good. The same thing with Joseph. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold to the Potiphar's house. He became the Egyptians' prime minister eventually, and he saved his own people. So that is why sometimes we think that God has forgotten you, or God doesn't care about you, but you just have to wait. Just hang on and press on and be rooted and grounded like a tree. Unmoved by the storms of life, even though you could not see the way out. But there's always a way out, as long as you fix your eyes to the author and the finisher of the faith, and his name is Jesus. It's always been the same Jesus who had rescued many people before. He bore your griefs and sorrows. He bind up your wounds, and he actually said, I have come to comfort those who are in need. I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly. And I think sometimes we forget, when we are facing trials and tribulation, we think that there is really no hope, or we feel helpless. But when you just hang on tightly and ride the tide of this wave, this too shall pass. When there is down, the only way is up. When it's stormy, sometimes it feels as though everything is ruined in front of us, but at the end of the day, there's always a sun that will come out eventually. So that is all that I would like for you to think about. That adversity might seem painful right now, and it seems as though it's impossible for you to get out of whatever circumstance you're facing. But if you just fix your eyes on the one who created the storm, he will get you through out of it. And don't be discouraged, and don't get swayed by the lies of the world, because I know that sometimes the enemy will tell you, saying no one cares about you and God has forgotten about you. But that is a lie from the pit of hell, because when you really know God's word, he always said, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you, and I will give you the helper, which is going to help you throughout this journey, as long as you remain faithful, and you are going to see that there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So be bold, be brave, and keep your faith. Until next time, I'll see you then.